We turn now to the debate over the proposed Islamic Center and mosque near Ground Zero. Opponents say that it's just too close to the site of the 9/11 attacks, though it cannot be seen from there. It took an ABC News producer 2 minutes and 45 seconds to walk from Ground Zero to the site of the proposed center. But the controversy has raised profound questions about religious tolerance and prejudice in the United States. And the backlash against Islam has been seen across the country, with mosques facing protests in California, Wisconsin, and Tennessee. And some intelligence experts now say that the backlash could also bolster extremists abroad who wish to portray the United States as anti-Islam. And so this morning, we cut through the heated rhetoric and hear directly from one of the leading organizers behind the Islamic Center, Daisy Khan, wife of Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, and also Rabbi Joy Levitt, executive director of the Jewish Community Center in Manhattan, who's an advisor on the project. Thank you both very much for joining me on this week. Can I ask you first, Daisy, what has been your reaction? You haven't spoken publicly. What has been your reaction to the last several weeks of this?
Well, we've been dialoguing with people. We've started meeting 9/11 families. We've started meeting other groups who have shown some concern. And, you know, we've been bridge builders since 9/11, and that's what we do best, and that's what we've decided to do at this very moment.
When you say you started to meet them, did you not meet with families as you began to propose this Islamic Center?
Well, we had already been in touch with 9/11 Families for Peaceful Tomorrows, so they represent 250 families. We've been working with them since 9/11, and so that group we already worked with and several other groups, but since this concern was raised, we've now started meeting with other groups privately.
Mm-hmm. Rabbi Joy Levitt, how did it come about that the two of you were working together on this?
Well, we got a call from Daisy when they began to think about this project and said, we want to build an MCC just like the JCC.
A Muslim Community Center.
That's right. And the JCC in Manhattan was imagined in 1990 and built its building. Actually, we opened 2 days after 9/11 and have been thriving. About 2,500 people walk into our doors every day. We were really honored to be able to unpack what we've learned, some of the things that we've learned.
What was it meant to be, the Islamic Center? Is it a mosque with a dome and minarets and loud calls to prayer 5 times a day? Or what is it?
Well, all religions Americanize over time. They go from a place of worship to a place of service. And community centers have been developed by Christian communities like YMCA, and the Jewish community has developed the JCC, and Muslim community is inevitably going to also develop such a center. So when I visited Joy Levitt and I saw the JCC, and I said, this is what we have to do. And so it is a community center, but it also has a prayer space within it because it will meet the needs of the Muslim community's need to worship on Fridays.
And what about it will be the community center?
Well, there will be 500-seat auditorium. There'll be a swimming pool. There'll be, athletic facilities. There'll be cooking classes. There'll be schools, small education forums, conferences, and it's basically become a place where ideas can be exchanged, but tolerance, mutual respect can also be extended.
Let me ask you both now, because obviously it has taken off on a whole different dimension over the last several weeks, and there's a huge amount of anxiety amongst many in the United States about the sensitivity of putting it where it is, particularly amongst some of the 9/11 families. So I want to play for you something that the governor of New York said, in fact, on CNN a week ago, about the potential of a compromise. Let's listen to what he said.
If people put their heads together, maybe we could find a site that's away from the site now, but still serves the catchment area. That would be a noble gesture to those who live in the area who suffered after the attack on this country, and at the same time would probably, in many ways, change a lot of people's minds about Islam.
So, Daisy, are you prepared? Do you have any plans to meet with him? Does Imam Faisal, do you plan to try to seek a compromise and move it?
Well, what we are doing is we are meeting several stakeholders right now because we understand the pain and the anguish that has been displayed throughout the country with the polls that are represented out there. And we want to build bridges. We don't want to create conflict. This is not where we were coming from. So this is an opportunity for us to really turn this around and make this into something very, very positive. So we will meet and we will do what is right for everyone.
Do you have a plan to specifically meet with the governor who's offered state land for this? And do you think that you will decide to move it?
We first want to meet with all the stakeholders who matter, who are the New Yorkers. The community board has overwhelmingly supported this. So have all the politicians, Scott Stringer, Mayor Bloomberg. And we have to be cognizant that we also have a constitutional right. We have the Muslim community around the nation that we have to be concerned about. And we have to worry about the extremists as well, because they are seizing this moment. And so we have to be very careful and deliberate in when we make any major decision like this.
I'll pursue that in a second, but so is moving on the table still?
Right now, it's not until we consult with all our stakeholders.
Can I ask you, Rabbi Levitt, what were there missteps at the beginning in terms of, let's say, some people have suggested there should have been a town hall meeting style, more outreach, more sophisticated public relations, not talking just to the people who agreed with you, but the people who might have the kind of issues that are being shown right now. Should there have been a different way of approaching this?
You know, we can always, in hindsight, look at these things and think, oh, gee, we should have done that. Clearly, when the JCC thinks about what we should have done differently, in fact, Daisy, when she came to us, said, what would you have done differently? We unpacked some of that for her. I said to her, we should have done more stroller space. It was actually on that level that we were talking. So
and we were talking about shoes, because our concern is shoes and her concern is strollers. So,
but reaching out to people, should there have been a more organized debate in the community, in the wider area, to talk about whether this was, how this was going to be seen?
I think what's important is that it's not too late to do that. We've invited, the JCC has invited Daisy and the imam to come speak at the JCC in September, and I hope that we'll be able to do that. They've certainly accepted our offer, and I hope that JCCs and other community centers in the Christian and Jewish community and in the secular world will come to do that, because clearly what this whole controversy has unleashed is a tremendous amount of misinformation, lack of knowledge about Islam that we need to address.
Well, let me take a few of those sort of in order. There's been a lot of heated rhetoric, as we've been saying. I want to play you something that the former House Speaker Newt Gingrich said about the plans to build this center near Ground Zero.
Nazis don't have the right to put up a sign next to the Holocaust Museum in Washington. We would never accept the Japanese putting up a site next to Pearl Harbor. Right. There's no reason for us to accept a mosque next to the World Trade Center.
Let me ask you directly, because he did bring up Nazi imagery there. What do you make of that?
Well, that's terrible imagery. But I think Mr. Gingrich has never been to the JCC, and he's never seen, you know, moms taking their babies to our swimming pool. He's never seen teenagers making sandwiches for homeless shelters. He's never seen husbands coming to grieve for their spouses in a bereavement group. That's what goes on in JCCs.
And that's what you plan for the Islamic Center?
Exactly. And he also has never been to Tribeca, to our mosque, which has been there for 27 years, only 12 blocks from Ground Zero. We've been neighbors, and we've been good neighbors. And as neighbors, we feel we want to rebuild our city and our neighborhood.
Do you have the plans for it? Do you have the architect? Do you have the funding? Is it something that could happen anytime, or is it still a long time off?
It's a long time off, because the project, was had to go through several processes, and civic hurdles were one of the most important ones. As you know, we had a landmark issue, so we were addressing the landmark issue, and we were working with our community board to get their willingness and acceptance and their welcome mat. And that's what we focused on first, and the rest is a process.
How much money has been raised, and are you prepared to discuss the issue of foreign funding? Let's say there was foreign funding. How would you be able to know exactly where that money was coming from, what other projects elsewhere that they may have given money to?
Well, this is where my counselor on my right is helping us, because our funding is going to be pretty much follow the same way that JCC does its fundraising. First, we have to develop a board. Then the board is going to have a financial committee, a fundraising committee that will be in charge of the fundraising. And we have promised that we will work with the Charities Bureau, that we will adhere to the highest and the strictest guidelines set forth by the Treasury Department, because there is so much angst about this. But we will follow the lead from Rabbi Joy Levitt.
Let me ask you also.
What Daisy means by that is that we went to our neighbors. We said, who believes in our vision? Who believes in a center of tolerance? Who believes in diversity? We went to parlor meetings in people's houses, and that's how the support for the JCC came about.
Let me ask you, because there have been also a lot of questions raised about your husband's political ideas and political views, specifically because of something that he said on 60 Minutes shortly after 9/11. Let me play that.
I wouldn't say that the United States deserved what happened, but the United States policies were an accessory to the crime that happened.
What do you think he meant by that?
It was a longer interview, and in the longer interview, he talked about the CIA's support specifically to Osama bin Laden and the Taliban. And
you mean back
yes,
when,
in the 80s.
Against the Soviet
Union. And how this was, you know, in CIA terms, a blowback of that. That's what he meant.
You've talked about the state of Islam in the United States. I mean, look, this Time magazine cover is being talked about a lot right now. Basically, is America Islamophobic? Is America Islamophobic? Are you concerned about the long-term relationship between American Muslims and the rest of society here?
Yes, I think we are deeply concerned because this is like a metastasized anti-Semitism. That's what we feel right now. It's not even Islamophobia, it's beyond Islamophobia. It's hate of Muslims. And we are deeply concerned. You know, yesterday I had a council with all Muslim religious leaders from around the country, and everybody is deeply concerned about what's going on around the nation.
Do you agree with what she just said and how she described it?
Well, there is some part of it that feels very familiar. You know, Peter Stuyvesant refused to allow synagogues to be built in New York in the 1600s. It took an act of Congress here in Washington to allow a synagogue to be built. In Connecticut, there were no synagogues allowed to be built in the 1600s and 1700s. The British wouldn't allow synagogues to be built in New York City. So we understand some of this pain, and yet we've also experienced a tremendous amount of support in this country. So I think we actually are in a position to both understand and be helpful to support religious tolerance in this country.
And the last word, do you think it will go ahead?
Of course, it has to go ahead. There's too much at stake. There's too much at stake. We have to go ahead with this project.
Daisy Khan, Rabbi Joy Levitt, thank you so much for talking to us.